talk about. I'll say that this is motivated by two specific instances of recent kind of controversy in TV criticism, but I'm interested in what we think of criticism as a whole. So I think, like, regardless of whether people have seen the shows I'm going to reference, these shows are only the occasion to talk about what criticism is or what it should be. First thing, people getting really mad about Ted Lasso, the show about the heart of gold American football coach who ends up in England coaching a English-style football team. The first season is one of the popular shows of the past year, blew up on Apple Plus, nominated for 20 Emmys, setting records all around. And one of the reasons people liked it is because Jason Sudeikis' lead character, Ted Lasso, kind of just like a good guy. And we don't have a lot of good guys on TV, especially in comedy. There's a lot of ironic detachment and us laughing at bad people. But watching Ted Lasso, and I think a lot of people watched it in the midst of the pandemic, made them feel good. And they liked it because of that. But now that people are like vaccinated and feeling a little bit better, they hate it. And people have been so mad over season 2 of this show. And the online discourse has really gone between some people who now are basically pulling the, see, I told you so, the show always sucked and you just didn't get it and here's why. And on the flip side, there's people who are just like, can't we just enjoy things, please? Why does everything have to involve a critical takedown? On the other side, I think it's been really interesting to watch the reaction to The White Lotus. And this is a show that was kind of universally loved during its 6-episode run. But in the weeks after it ended, all of a sudden criticism started popping up, which, in my humble opinion, shows that people didn't understand what the show was about. And some of the criticism was very literal. So, for example, one of the characters in the show, played by the wonderful, wonderful comedic actor and writer Natasha Rothwell, is a woman of color who basically, at the end of the show, gets screwed over by a white woman played by Jennifer Coolidge. Some of the response is like, how horrible, we didn't give this woman of color character more agency, et cetera, which is like, if this was the real world, then yes, that is bad. We should be critical. But in the context of the show is largely a satire about how terrible rich people can be and how out of touch with the world they are. So some of the stuff that happens in this show, it's like, it doesn't make you feel good, but the show is trying to make a point about this sort of thing. And I'll read one quote. This is from an Allison Herman article. She's a TV writer at The Ringer who does really good work. And this is her writing about the Ted Lasso controversy. She says, "What's so wrong, they ask, with a show that chooses not to challenge viewers, but instead make them feel good? Can't we just relax and enjoy a piece of entertainment? Considering what I do for a living, I'll likely never agree that anything is just a TV show, let alone a massively successful beachhead for a relatively new streaming service. But I'd also point out that the ferocity of Ted Lasso's fandom itself belies the point. People are protective of their comforts, especially in times as harrowing as the past year and change." So how do you feel, and this could apply to Ted Lasso or things in general, like, what is your relationship to reading criticism about things you like? Right? So if you like a show and then you see whether it's people on the internet or people that are writing for prominent like websites or newspapers, does it affect you if they either say the thing you like is really good or actually the thing you like sucks?
If I really like something, I do like to read articles and things about other people enjoying it because I like the perspective. And sometimes like when someone is so joyful and happy about something, I like to read it because sometimes they share their own experiences or they look at it in a different way. And I like reading that sort of thing because I also feel an emotional connection to something. If it's something I really like and someone dislikes it, I don't read it, mostly because I just don't care. Like, it's not like it's going to change my opinion about something. I would just rather not read something because we're just two different people and I'm not looking for someone to change my mind about something that I love.
Yeah. Robin, what's your relationship to, in general, like criticism, whether it's TV, film, music, literature?
I kind of like a bit of cheeky criticism. I think it depends what it's about. So like, if it's about a massive show that has like thousands and thousands of fans and everyone agrees that it's pretty good and someone's like, actually, that wasn't that good, I'm like, yeah, you take them down. But if it's a show that people are like on the fence about, I just get really defensive and I'm like, don't touch my show. Leave it alone. It's kind of like, there are a lot of really valid criticisms of loads of the media that I like. Like, I'm a big Rick and Morty fan, but there's loads of things that you could say about that show that aren't necessarily like great. And a lot of the fans kind of potentially are not like as great as they think they are.
Yeah, I, as the host of a Rick and Morty podcast, I regularly get emails from Rick and Morty fans letting me know that I shouldn't exist. So yeah, there's some problems in the fandom.
Yeah, so they're it can be quite vicious in the fandoms of these shows. And sometimes when I see criticisms of them, I'm like, yeah, you take those guys down. You take them down. But with shows like Tuca and Bertie, which not a lot of people actually watch, a lot of the criticisms are kind of not, I feel like a lot of them aren't valid. They're from people who watched BoJack Horseman and thought like, oh, this is going to be exactly the same. And then find out that Tuca and Bertie is a totally different show that's just as good, but about like female trauma and like womanhood and stuff like that. And then they get angry. I hate that. That's like one of the worst things that I can read in terms of criticism.
More, I think for me, like the sweet spot of criticism, and Alison Herman gets at this in her piece a little bit, is a good criticism, in my humble opinion, criticizes a thing on its own terms. So a critic is able to look at a film, a television show, an album, and ask, what is this thing trying to do on its own terms? And evaluates it like that. I was thinking earlier, like, you know, if a music critic is going to talk about an avant-garde jazz record, they shouldn't evaluate it in terms of, oh, it doesn't have catchy pop hooks, because it's not trying to do that.
That's a really interesting take. I sometimes just want to, like, does anybody else just want to take it for what it is and not think too deeply? And like, I don't want to be like a critic when I'm watching something. I just want to just watch something and just enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, that's fine. And just feel like I didn't like that. I'm not going to continue watching it. Like I feel like there's like this pressure now where everything has to be discussed. And I know we're on a podcast where we discuss everything, but like, if I say like I don't like a TV show in my personal life, I'll have friends that are like, well, what didn't you like about it? Like was it a specific character, or like was it a storyline? And I'm like, no, it just wasn't for me. Like, not everything has to be dissected. Not everything has to have like a good reason. I just didn't fucking like it. Like,
well, that's an interesting thing you say, right? Because do you think there's a difference like between you like a show and a friend says, oh, like that wasn't for me, but that's cool, or the friend says, you like that show's idiotic? And I feel like a lot of the latter happens, and especially on like the Twitter discourse, it's rarely, oh, you know, Ted Lasso didn't really work for me.
When people tell me they like certain things and I just didn't care for them at all, like my response is always, oh, what did you like about it? Because maybe it might change my perspective. I might look at it differently. Or I'll be like, that's really great. Like, I'm glad that you really love that show and that like show brought you joy. That's great. I would never think like, oh my God, unless the show was like super creepy and weird, and I would be like, oh,
we don't like creepy and weird. Robin, how does stuff make you feel if you like a thing a lot and someone says, oh, you like that? That thing sucks.
I'd like to say that it doesn't impact me, but it does quite a lot. I think it depends on the vitriol of the person saying it, because you could be like, nah, didn't really like it. Or you could be like you were saying, like, that sucks. That's the worst thing I've ever seen. If you like that, I hate you. I wish you were dead. And there's sometimes it's hard to tell which one of those someone is going for. And then obviously when it's coming from a friend, like, it kind of hurts a bit more, because you're like, I thought you got me, but you don't like the shows I see myself in.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because we do that. We see ourselves in the things we consume. So when people reject those things, that's like they're rejecting a part of us. But I feel like there's like, especially with comedy, there can be this bitterness that's like, I don't find this funny, thus I'm annoyed that everyone else is telling me it's so funny, thus this actually sucks, leave me alone.
I'm one of those people that if everybody finds something funny, sometimes I don't understand it, but I know that that's something that is about me. Like, I often don't understand things. Or like my sense of humor is just not what other people think is funny. So for me, it's like, oh, and there's almost pressure that I feel, because I'm like, oh, everybody thinks it's funny. Like, why don't I think it's funny? Like, why don't I understand the humor? And felt more comfortable as I've gotten older to just be like, yeah, I don't know. There's just something like a chip missing. I just don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, and I guess to like at least touch on it, because I know I brought it up before with like the White Lotus thing. The thing that strikes me about that show is I think it's very clearly a satire. And I think something I've noticed in the discourse recently is people don't know what satire is anymore, and they don't know how to evaluate it. I think people think that what satire is like someone decides they hate a group of people and they write a thing that roasts those people and puts moral condemnation on those people, right? Whereas good satire is often, I mean, I guess like one of the most popular recent satires is like Veep, or, you know, based on like In the Loop from the UK, which are shows that like, I don't know, they're satirical because they center themselves in the stories of these people. They let us see their psychology. And if anything, they like let them be the moral logic of the thing. So as viewers, we're able to see how those people simply being themselves starts to deconstruct something. And I think with The White Lotus, people have been, I think, unfairly judging the show's creator, Mike White, because the show doesn't do what they want it to do. And in a sense, it lets the bad people win. And I would say because it's satire, that's the whole point, that under the system we currently live in the world, bad people normally win. The selfish, the vapid, and the well-connected are normally going to do better than, you know, indigenous people working in an exploitative job on a colonized island. Like, it's not going to work out for you well in that position. Not because the showrunner is saying like, I hate Native Hawaiians, because they're simply saying this is how things often go. And it should make you feel weird because that's what satire is supposed to do. This is me being a little bit soapboxy, but I do think it's an example of like, if a show is supposed to be a kind of dark satire, evaluate it as a dark satire. If a show is supposed to be a witty political comedy, do that. And some shows like Ted Lasso, I think, are literally just trying to be like comfort television. And I think there's a reason we like comfort television right now. And this is similar to like the need for satire, because the world sucks in a lot of ways. And maybe because the world sucks a lot and many of us go work 8, 9, 10 hours at a job we don't like, when you get home, maybe the last thing you want is a television show that reminds you how bad the world sucks. I don't know.
True.